What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more Savoy, and we're back for another re-recorded track for their 2007 Savoy Songbook Volume 1, and this is the re-recorded title track from their 2001 album, Reasons to Stay Indoors. I like this track a lot. I think it has some different sonic flavors. It begins with a bit of ambience, but overall it feels very uplifting. It's got a bit of a symphonic sweep to it. So yes, definitely some nice sonic ingredients and some clever lines. I remember a couple in particular. The refrain I think we hear more than once, so I'm guessing that means it's part of the chorus, though in the moment I'm forgetting. But about "you remind me of the man I used to be and some say I still am." And then there's that bit about after school you started working a job whereas your friends or other people were doing things that were interesting or fun or something to that effect. So there's a real narrative in time being suggested, even if in the moment I'm forgetting what the overall direction or impetus of it is. Either way, I'm curious to hear, of course, how sonically this might be different, so let's give it a listen. This is Savoy, and the re-recorded version of Reasons to Stay Indoors included on their 2007 Savoy Songbook Volume 1 album.
You'll get accepted into Yale, but they'll excuse you when you fail. You'll get a scholarship to Brown, but that color brings you down. You'll go to Colgate for a year in the fresh air up there. Grow a habit hard to please from a semester overseas. You're really not quite well, you know that. And everyone can tell, you know that. Reasons to stay indoors you don't need anymore. You remind me of the man I once was, and some say I still am. You'll get a job right out of school while your friends do something cool. You'll get politically involved, but your actions lack resolve. You'll play the loner for a while, dressed in black with creepy vibes. You'll stay inside for weeks on end with imaginary friends. Really not quite well, you know that. And everyone can tell, you know the reasons to stay indoors you don't need anymore. accepted into Yale. They'll excuse you
Probably cancel your federal funding as well. So, yeah, I feel like the lyrics, or not the lyrics, the intro and outro maybe are the most distinct, and maybe I'm not remembering that right, but even though I recall the original having an ambient type of intro, I feel like there was a bit more reverb and echoic dissonance in the intro to this re-recording, and yet at the same time, I feel like if there is a notable difference in the main, like, middle of the tune, it was maybe that it felt a bit more vocal focused, like the mixing was different such that the vocals felt a bit more front and center, and overall it still had, you know, the strings giving it that symphonic sweep. Especially I was noticing it in this listening in the second half, whereas the first half I was keying in more on the keyboard or like piano line, but it felt maybe a bit more like tightly or intimately arranged so that the vocals came to the fore more than some of the sonics in the original recording. Now that's a bit of a hypothesis because in the moment I'm not remembering exactly, but if I have a notable take on the difference between the two sonically, I would say again the intro here felt a bit more dissonant and cavernous, and again with some echo and reverb relative to the seemingly more smooth and straight away ambient style intro of the original. But either way, I think it is a really nice track, and there's a lot of clever writing about, again, you'd sort of get involved with, what was it, or like politically involved, but you're something about like lacking resolve, so there's some clever writing and, you know, creative rhyming that gives us this larger scope of a narrative. And it was indeed the, you know, while you're right out of, you get a job right out of school while your friends are doing something cool, so, you know, sort of like a pleasing phonetic rhyme, but also a line that, you know, speaks to the experience of, you know, transitioning, the, you know, coming of age, and what are you going to do with yourself when you get out of university, and, you know, referencing the university brown, but then, you know, that's not your favorite color or something to that effect. So again, there's a lot of clever writing, and I think a line about Colgate and the fresh air, which I believe Colgate is in upstate New York, where it is indeed a bit less urban, so there's like some specific place and regional references. But yes, just a really cool tune, original or re-recording. And I, again, if I noticed anything different musically or sonically in this case, it was the intro and the vocals as relative to the original recording. But either way, in the moment, I'm thinking that was it the penultimate of the re-recorded tracks? Yeah, so the next one is Lackluster Me, another title track that I'm hugely fond of, and as I think I've said before, to this day, I will say that the Lackluster Me album is, at least in the conversation, from my favorites from Savoy. I think it was a really compelling album sonically, and one that, again, felt very far away in terms of what they were trying relative to Mary Is Coming. And again, I enjoy that debut album a great deal, but as I said, by the time you get to Lackluster Me, it feels like, oh wow, so they're really expanding the sound and, you know, bringing in some more like electronically layered elements. So either way, I'm looking forward to hearing the re-recorded version of that track. Thank you again to Graham and to all the AHA family who've remained part of this Savoy deep dive, which again, after we do that one, I'm not quite sure if there's anything left. So either way, I know there's some music videos. Luca, see, you were being funny earlier, but now putting your claws on the wall is less amusing. Yes, I'm talking about you. In any case, I'll stop rambling. Let me know what you think, and Luca and I will see you next time. Peace.